Well, we've come away to Portland, Oregon.
We did.
Actually, to Brooks, Oregon, which is nearby, to Antique Powerland.
That sounds like fun.
It's a really fun place. It's a museum. It's a whole collection of museums is what it actually is.
Wow.
And every year they have the Great Oregon Steam Up,
Wow.
which is an antique equipment show. It reminds me a lot of the one at Rob Rossi's, the Best of the West Antique Equipment Show.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
Same idea. Big
Yes.
steam tractors and crazy steam operated and gas powered and you name it. Anyway, check this out. The Great Oregon Steam Up at Antique Powerland in Brooks, Oregon. Antiques Powerland is actually a collection of a whole bunch of smaller museums, two of which are train stations or railroad museums of some kind.
Boy, that poor caboose. I hope it's being restored.
Yeah, and for some reason, look, it's sitting on passenger trucks. Now, these were cool. This was an area where they had set up little miniature steam engines. A lot of the steam engines here are full-size steam engines, but these are like little toy or, I don't know, what would you call them?
They're fun. They're cute.
They're great. These were all built by a guy named Hadley, and I guess they're part of the permanent collection here. Not really sure.
These are so adorable. I'd love to have one just sitting out somewhere.
I like all the different styles and configurations here. They're all very, very unique and all scratch built. But they had those on display, and they had a lot of them running on compressed air, and his son was here with them showing them off. He himself has passed away.
So he had all these different designs. Even in his passing, there was 3, 4, or 5 that he was working on.
Yeah.
That just various stages of development and just never got to finish.
I'm not sure what they're proving, but it's not a steam engine.
No, it's an optical delusion.
It's an optical delusion and steel.
That was before the Wank, or just after the
I had this in my first Mustang, I'm sure.
Oh, look at this little steam tractor.
Which I guess is appropriate because this week we're mostly showing steam tractors, really early steam tractors. But most of these little small engines are just demonstrating all different kinds of steam technology.
Now this one's quite a Goliath.
This is a little bit larger than the small one, so not everything here is a miniature engine. Some of these are massive.
What in the world was this thing used for?
Who knows? But this week we're really looking at antique steam tractors, and there were dozens and dozens of them here at the show for us to feast our eyeballs on. This one is a case, and the cases are real easy to spot because they have an American eagle on the front of them. It seems they adopted the American eagle as their mascot. It was actually a Civil War regiment's mascot, and Case adopted that. Very patriotic.
No kidding.
I think America had a completely different sense of what was patriotic back then.
Now what I like is the placement of the American flag on all of these ahead of the driver, where it should be.
Yeah, if you read proper flag placement, it says that the flag comes first at all times.
Country first.
Country first. You should not be placing a flag at the back of your truck. It goes on the front, or it shouldn't go on there at all. Now this thing's really peculiar, a vertical boiler tractor. Most of them are horizontal, but clearly not all of them.
So it wasn't an ice cream machine.
No, it certainly wasn't. One of the things that's very different about these from a steam locomotive is that the engine is mounted on top of the boiler or somewhere else on the frame. This because quite often the steam engine is being used to power a threshing machine or a hay baler or something, so you want to be able to run that separately. This thing is the governor, and it controls the speed of the engine. Right now we're running balls in. When you're running high speed, you're running balls out.
Wow.
That's actually what that expression means. Is I don't know, it picked up a different connotation somewhere like that. Balls out means your governor's balls are to their farthest out position.
I see these have a whistle on them.
Yeah, every one of them has a whistle, and a lot of them have a bell for the exact same reason that steam locomotives have whistles and bells. You don't want to run over somebody.
Does it signal brake?
Yes. So you want to be able to alert people that you got some massive piece of equipment coming. Moreover, it's really hard to control these things. There are about 50 revolutions lock to lock on the steering wheel because you have perhaps 10 tons pressing down on steel front wheels. And, well, the driver just doesn't have that much control over the direction of the thing. If you're driving over uneven ground, then you really have your hands full pointing this in some particular direction. Sure, a lot of them here at this show, but when you consider the tens of thousands of them that were built, it's not surprising that a lot of them have survived.
Well, I remember seeing these as a kid. I was just not sure. They seemed like kind of a dilly machine to me, but, they were old and funny, and farmers used them.
Yeah, I remember as a kid thinking they were fascinating, but didn't give them much thought. I had no idea they were as old as they are. Notice here that he's filling it with water. They run on water and wood. And in the Pacific Northwest, both water and wood are just sort of randomly laying all over the place. So there was no shortage of fuel for these things. This guy's having a little trouble steering this thing around some obstacles. He did have a close encounter with a tree at one point. The tractor won, the tree lost.
There was just a parade of these things coming along.
Literally, every once in a while they'd fire every one of them up and just drive them around and drive them around.
They were always fired up and running for sure.
Yeah, I guess it's easier once you've got it fired up. Just keep it hot and keep it running for the whole 2 days, maybe even the whole 2 weeks. I don't know.
Hey, look, there's a steamroller.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these things were always called steamrollers. A lot of kids today still call them steamrollers. Except this one actually isn't. It's got an internal combustion engine in it.
Seriously, what's the stack for?
Well, I was checking that out. I looked it all over, and the stack is just decorative. It doesn't do a darn thing. Maybe it adds some weight to push down on the front roller, but this huge thing right here is an internal combustion engine. It sort of predates gasoline, but I'm assuming it ran on benzene or some kind of distillate or something. But some of these really early tractors actually have internal combustion hit and miss engines in them.
Yes, a hit and miss engine. They only fire now and again.
Right, the governor on these things is hooked up to the valve system, so when the RPMs slow down, it fires the engine, and then it just coasts for a while. It requires having huge flywheels to make that work. But these internal combustion tractors, boy, there's a bunch of them here, and they're all real early designs like that one, 19th century predominantly. And at first you'd swear they're a steam tractor, but they're not.
Just look at the size of the radiator on that.
Yeah, quite often with these early internal combustion engines, the cooling system is the biggest thing on there. They hadn't quite figured out water cooling, and so sometimes these radiators are as big as the whole rest of the tractor. They're just as big and ungainly as the steam tractors.
Well, they don't smell the same. They kind of stink.
They stink to high heaven. I don't know what they were burning in them, but it doesn't smell like burning wood. It smells more like burning yuck.
I imagine finding fuel for these would have been a real chore. It's not like there were gas stations everywhere back then.
No, there wouldn't have been. You'd have had to have your own gas pump. I'm pretty sure that's where our Wayne gas pump came from. I think it was just used on a farm or a ranch.
I'll bet it kept people from buying these if they couldn't get fuel for them.
Once we get into the 20th century, these things start taking on the look of a more modern internal combustion engine. They're no longer hit and miss. They're regular 4-cycle engines, and they run on good old pump gasoline, so a lot simpler.
I think my favorite are the 19th century tractors.
I love the older ones. They're just so strange looking with these huge radiators and whatnot. And they're just such a handful to drive around. I thought this guy was about to run over us both. He didn't have a whole lot of control over this machine. Moreover, I don't think he could see us from up there.
So we had to look out for him.
Yeah, it's just like working around trains. You got to be really careful. Stay out of their way. But once we get into the more modern equipment, boy, they were just everywhere. And they still everywhere. I don't know how much of this equipment's still in use, but thousands, at least hundreds of these things all showed up at the show. We kept walking through the area of modern tractors here. We never did get to the far end of it.
No.
Our feet gave out, and it was just like, well, there's some more out there, but I guess we won't be seeing them. I understand way out at the far end there were automobiles and trucks.
Oh, wow.
But we just never got that far. But if you're really going to spend some time looking at these things, well, there's just so darn many of them. Just hundreds and hundreds. It's as big as hot August nights.
Only tractors.
Only tractors instead of muscle cars and hot rods. Now here's a classic piece of American ingenuity.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think a factory built this, but who can say? It's two tractors spliced together And the front tractor pivots so you can use that to steer the rear tractor.
That's a double dually.
That's a double dually. It's well, it's the most peculiar tractor there, so kudos for that. Well, anyway, it's sure a heck of a neat show.
I really enjoyed that.
We had a ball. We wore out our feet, but boy did we have a ball. And keep in mind that this is just steam tractors and internal combustion tractors. I think there were just as many, if not more, stationary hit-and-miss engines.
Oh, there were, yes.
Yeah, and just there again, they just went on and on and on and on forever. So that will be next week's show, is stationary engines. But what a fun time we had with these tractors and pieces of construction equipment, but mostly farm tractors. Thousands of farm tractors of all different vintages. Well, that's the Great Oregon Steam Up Part 1.
Oh.
This was just the steam tractors and the gasoline tractors and the crazy stuff like that, but there's so much.
So much. It was
And
amazing.
it's acres and acres and acres. That so many acres your feet acre. Anyway, it hurts to walk around after 2 days.
Green acres.
This is the place to be. These weren't very green. It was very hot
it was
and
very
smoky,
dusty.
as a matter of fact,
That's
and
right.
dusty and steamy. And anyway, that's part 1. The tractors and the stuff that you can drive around.
Oh, boy.
We're going to be back here looking at the stationary engines. And that'll be further fun, and that will be a good deal of fun. At any rate, if you haven't been over to the channel, do pop over to the channel, and if you're not a subscriber, do subscribe.
Absolutely.
It helps us out, and it'll be good for you because you'll be notified, and such as that, when we put up a new show. And the easy way to subscribe is with the blue button. Are you ready for it? Zoink! Big round button right there. But we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring, and we will see you here again next week with some more Powerland. See you then.
See
Bye-bye.
ya. Bye.